I'm Cole Haddon, and this is 5 a.m. Real Talk, a 5 a.m. StoryTalk plog. Hey, Story Talkers, how are you doing this week? A lot has happened since the last episode of Real Talk. I mean, not to me. In America, the world too. Guys, what the fuck? I try not to curse too much in these podcasts, but seriously, what the fuck is happening? We'll get into some of it, as well as some thoughts I've been having about the arts lately that maybe you'll have some thoughts of your own about. Remember, if you want to interact with me about what I talk about on here, or any other 5 a.m. Story Talk episode, subscribe to the 5 a.m. Story Talk newsletter that's currently hosted at Substack. You can find a link to that in the show notes. But as of last week, 5 a.m. Story Talk also has a dedicated Instagram page where all of my shenanigans in the podcast space will show up. Just look up 5 a.m. Story Talk podcast there, or go to the link in the show notes. You can find any episode you want to ask about at IG, then jump into the comments there for a quick way to chat with me. Before I get any further today, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which this podcast is recorded, what we call Australia today, and pay respects to elders past and present and emerging. Sovereignty was never ceded. All right, let's do this. Guys, since we last talked, I've watched white supremacists march in Australian cities and in London, where I remember a lot of posher white friends telling me racism isn't a serious problem. Whoops. In the States, white supremacist Charlie Kirk got assassinated. So many white Americans I know couldn't stop themselves from moaning about him online too, despite the fact that they never seem to have that kind of energy for kids who are mass murdered while learning how to do arithmetic. Now, I'm not a political podcast, though I think politics are important and relevant to what we talk about here at 5 a.m. Story Talk. All good art is political, as Toni Morrison said. But what I mean here is I'm not going to cover any of these events like I'm some kind of click-seeking pundit. What I will say about them is none of this surprises me. And what I do know is I expect it will get worse. No, I know it will, at least in the US. My creative angst, the great tension I know a lot of artists feel right now, is what do we do about it? Our voices are regularly being silenced these days. Sometimes whole careers shut down. If you talk about Gaza, for just one example. If we're not afraid of that, we're worried about the far right slapping a bullseye on our backs. The Vice President of the United States is out there telling anyone who will listen to go after anyone who criticizes Charlie Kirk and to get them fired. Karen Attiah, a Washington Post opinion columnist I like reading a lot, is no longer a Washington Post opinion columnist because the paper fired her, a black woman, for simply posting a direct quote about black women from Kirk. She didn't even have to editorialize the quote. All she had to do was share Kirk's own words, and it got her fired. Then there's what happened to Jimmy Kimmel, which may or may not have positively resolved itself by the time you listen to this. This kind of state-sponsored censorship is terrifying, and a corporation as big and culturally influential as Disney so quickly taking the knee to a fascist is terrifying. The point from the start was clear. Speak out against our glorious leader, and you could have your life ruined. Our free speech isn't even at risk anymore. It's already under their control, and they're not going to stop until they control our thoughts, too. This is what people mean when they say something is Orwellian. But hey, say we, artists, say we're brave enough to risk all this, and we just go for it. How do we do it? How do we even start to push back in any way? I don't just mean in America either, and I don't just mean about fascism. I mean everything. Everything terrible. And there's so much of it. Do we tackle what's happening around us, this madness, directly? Or do we try to infuse the world with much-needed hope in this time of profound darkness? I'm thinking something like James Gunn's Superman film, which readers of my newsletter will know I'm a huge fan of. I think we'll remember it as one of the most important films of this year in terms of how it challenged the Hollywood status quo and showed filmmakers a way to respond to fascism and billionaires in cinema today. And that's the job. After all, at least as far as I'm concerned, to take on the world, to wave a mirror in its face, to show it what it is, to provoke thought, to provoke change, to imagine a better future for ourselves than these hate mongers and death cultists and tech bros want for us. But here's the thing. What if we do go for it, despite the risks? What if we, maybe arrogantly, try to transform the world with our art? And I don't mean literally here, like one book or one film can outright do that. But we can say, move the needle forward. Does doing that even matter in the long run anymore? I sometimes worry. I certainly have this past week. Ever since Amazon announced they would use their AI model Showrunner, that's what it's actually called, Showrunner. What an insult to actual showrunners and the human skill they developed to earn that title. So Amazon announced it would use this AI to, I don't even know how to describe its intentions here. Reconstruct? Reconstruct was one word I saw used, but that's bullshit. But let's go with it. Amazon's going to reconstruct the 43 minutes of The Magnificent Ambersons, Orson Welles' 1942 follow-up to Citizen Kane, one of the greatest films ever made. And it's going to use AI to somehow make up those 43 minutes from notes and photos, I'm assuming. First, it's not possible to do this. Magnificent Ambersons was a film realized via the imagination of Welles, his crew, and the exigencies of production. The studio savaged his cut while he was overseas, including junking a giant chunk of it so it couldn't be saved. Whatever is reconstructed will be no closer to what was lost 80 years ago than a narrator just reading the script aloud to listeners. Second, Amazon. These people, the ones making these decisions, should be ashamed of themselves. But what I'd propose to you, you listening, is this isn't a cash grab. It's testing the waters, not unlike what those fascists in Washington have been doing for a while now. You disrupt in ways that most people won't take violent offense to, like meddling with an 80-year-old Orson Welles film. Feels somewhat innocuous, right? Just one more sad travesty in a sea of them. But really, it's to prove it can be done, to normalize it, to make sure their catalog of films can be manipulated, repurposed, butchered for maximum profit. The real goal is to ultimately strip mine Hollywood's film and TV catalog to create endless AI knockoffs that then themselves are going to feed on themselves until you reach some kind of peak shitification of our whole culture. These Hollywood CEOs don't want filmmakers part of that process any longer than they have to be. And now you might not want to believe that, but it's true all the same. Filmmakers cost money. We complain. We make mistakes that are profoundly expensive to fix after production wraps. Same with actors who expect all of these incredibly inconvenient things like, getting paid for their time and their identity rights. Get rid of them and profits are going to skyrocket. At least that's the vision the tech bros have sold to Hollywood. The thing is, if anyone did to something they created anything remotely like this, they would be crushed. They would want to scream. They would want to fight. But since they can't actually create anything real themselves, they can only manipulate and exploit and ultimately destroy, they'll never understand that feeling as they inflict it on countless other people. It's cultural barbarism, and it should make you despair because it's not just wrong, it's how cultures die, becoming self-devouring monsters incapable of original thoughts and might carry us into the future rather than cashing in on the past. Now, like I said, I've been wondering what the point is a lot lately. How do we resist this coming doom? Well, I'm as confused as you are most of the time. It feels futile to do so, doesn't it, to resist? But human beings have been at the brink so many times in history, and somehow we make it through. I think how you choose to engage with this futility determines who you are. When people say it's inevitable, that sounds a lot like saying, accept your intellectual and existential enslavement to kings and queens, to false gods, to tech bros trying to gaslight you into submission. And maybe it's the wrong way to go about it, but my approach is to remember that I am a storyteller. And how we tell stories has evolved endlessly over the centuries. I'm going to plow on as long as I can, doing what I can, while trying to add something positive to the cultural discourse. Because every time someone says some medium is dead, for example, movies, something like K-pop Demon Hunters reminds you people are still desperate to experience something collectively. They don't want lonely experiences unique only to them. They don't want to watch AI films or read AI books only custom made for them. They want to share in something with the world around them. They want to be part of a community. Art is a communal act. It's why I call it the oldest religion in the world. So don't give up, my friends, or don't let the bastards grind you down, as Margaret Atwood would say. You could be the creative voice that changes a single mind that could actually change the whole world. So we need more of you. Now, here's the hilarious thing. I wanted this week's Real Talk to be all happy, but that's hard these days, man. It's extra hard for artists. The job involves empathy, or at least it should, and empathy, it takes a toll. What I can say is I've also found a lot of joy these past 2 weeks. I celebrated the 20th anniversary of my arrival in Hollywood, a decision to gamble on me and my talent that changed my life. I wouldn't have my career, my wife, my kids, if I had listened to everyone back in Detroit who told me I was crazy. I also spent an amazing day in Melbourne, checking out the National Gallery of Victoria's French Expressionism exhibition, room after room of gorgeous, spectacularly colorful, deeply moving paintings by Degas, Pissarro, Renoir, and the Monets. I haven't seen so many Monets in one room since the last time I was in France. I wrote a bit about this at the 5 a.m. StoryTalk newsletter, which I'll link to in the show notes as soon as it publishes later today. Look for it. It's called The Magic and Mystery of Ephemeral Things. In film, I love Paolo Sorrentino's Parthenope, which was my Father's Day treat to myself here in Australia. Sorrentino is one of my favorite European directors, mostly because his films and TV series are so beautiful and so specifically him that I always feel like I'm lost in one of his dreams when I watch them. But I think the thing I've loved most these past 2 weeks that's brought me more joy than I could have anticipated is watching my two boys, they're 7 and 11, dance and sing along endlessly to K-pop Demon Hunters. What a wonderful film. Yeah, its music might be driving me a little mad at this point, a lot mad, but this is my kids' Star Wars: A New Hope. This is a zeitgeist moment for them they'll never forget. And it pisses me off that they had to discover it sitting on their couch instead of a movie theater. But I suppose I'll take what I can get these days. K-pop Demon Hunters has connected the world in a way a piece of art hasn't for a long, long time. Please check it out if you haven't already. Share it with your kids. And if you don't have any, that's okay. It's still going to be for you. Trust me. Because if it's not, you're probably so broken there's no chance you're finding any value in what I'm saying here anyway. So, I think we're about done for today. Before I bid you adieu, did you enjoy this ep of Real Talk? Be sure to subscribe to 5 a.m. Story Talk if you haven't already. If you enjoy what I'm doing here, giving this podcast a 5-star rating or leaving a glorious, oh my God, this podcast changed my life forever review is a great no-cost way to support what I'm doing here. If you want to get even more out of the experience, though, consider upgrading to a paid subscription at Apple to get bonus episodes from all of my podcast guests talking about a seminal piece of art from their lives. If you become a paid subscriber at the 5 a.m. StoryTalk newsletter, you'll get access to all my podcast episodes days, weeks, and months earlier than you would otherwise, not to mention hundreds of other arts articles. The next episode of 5 a.m. Real Talk will be published in 3 weeks. These show up on podcast players on the second and fourth Monday of every month. But 5 a.m. Story Talk, the podcast, the normal part of it, will be back in a couple of days. I'll be joined by Karen Horn, DEI pioneer and former senior VP of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion North America at Warner Brothers Discovery. We're going to dig into what's going on in Hollywood since Trump's re-election, while also discussing the impact DEI has had on American society and culture. The economics of what we discuss is going to blow your mind. So let's throw out the political hyperboles and outright lies and try to understand this issue and what's at stake better together. See you then, Story Talkers.